Musical Talk, the UK independent musical theatre podcast.
Hello, welcome to Musical Talk. My name is Nick Hudson. This week you're going to be hearing from Robert Gordon and me as we talk about The Boy in the Dress, which is the new musical from the Royal Shakespeare Company, and it is playing at the Royal Shakespeare Company Theatre in Stratford Upon Avon. We were very lucky to be asked to go along and see the show and share our thoughts. It's based on the David Walliams novel of the same title and features songs by Guy Chambers and Robbie Williams, and the book is by Mark Ravenhill. So join us for a cold evening in November as Robert and I share our thoughts pre-show, mid-show and post-show on The Boy in the Dress. I'm sat here with Robert Gordon in the beautiful Stratford Upon Avon, and we're here for the opening night of The Boy in the Dress, which we'll talk about once we've seen it.
We're sitting in the Black Swan, which is commonly known as the Dirty Duck, actually, across the road.
Having a drink
from the theatre.
This is rather special for me because I was here 10 years ago, exactly-ish, and I saw Matilda here at the Courtyard Theatre, which is now where we're not seeing.
Which is the other place, actually.
Yeah, because they were rebuilding the Shakespeare Theatre here, which I haven't seen yet. Before we talk about, I want to talk to you about Curtains, which we've both seen, which is coming to the West End. Hello, Mark Shenton's here.
To watch,
yes,
yes,
looking forward to it. I want to say, do you think that they're after another Matilda?
Of course they are. I think every director at the RSC since Trevor Nunn became a multimillionaire with Cats, every director at the RSC has tried on their sort of exit from the theatre, although I don't think that Greg Doran has plans to retire yet, but I think certainly Adrian Noble, when he made his exit from the Royal Shakespeare Company, directed Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, but before that Trevor Nunn's successor, and I've forgotten his name and it will come to me, but Susan Fleetwood's husband.
Nick Heitner, do you?
No, long before Nick Heitner's time, in the 80s, staged Carrie in hopes that this would be his pension, but it didn't work out that way, as we all know. So I think that's what Greg Doran is doing. I think this is actually an opportunity to make a lot of money both for the Royal Shakespeare Company, but also for Greg Doran, if I may say so.
And it's been said that David Walliams, whose novel The Boy in the Dress is based on, is the next Roald Dahl. He's a massively successful author. Quentin Blake did the illustrations, so it's very much in that same style.
Yes, I think it's very much trying to imitate the success and the formula even of Matilda. Now, I thought Matilda was absolutely wonderful.
Yes.
And I think that Greg Doran's got a lot to live up to. I'm not sure about Greg Doran as a producer of musicals. He's a very good as a director of musicals. He's a very good director of Shakespeare, very experienced. I think it takes a certain kind of quality to be a director of musicals. I personally don't think Sam Mendes, good though he is as a film and stage director, is a great director of musicals. I think that Matthew Warchus is a great director of musicals. So is Trevor Nunn.
Yes. But we'll let you know our thoughts during and after the show. But the last thing we saw together was Curtains, which when we saw it, you said, I wish it would come to the West End.
And it has.
They've announced a West End transfer, only for a month though. But it's still the first.
It's a great Christmas show, isn't it? To have a Christmas show.
Nothing's more Christmassy than multiple deaths on stage with comedy wrapped around it.
Of course they are. It is very comic. It is a whodunit. It's an absolutely brilliant musical. I think if it had been produced at a different time on Broadway than it was, it should have been one of their huge successes because it's pure entertainment. It's absolutely brilliantly written. It's very witty. It's very funny. And it's utterly charming. And I have to say, I saw the original Broadway production with Deborah Monk and David Hyde Pierce twice, and I think this production is at least as good and in some ways better.
Because you're a bit, as a lot of people were, you're a bit umming and ahhing about Jason Mountford being in it. A comedian.
Yes.
The David Hyde Pierce character, the detective from the north, or whatever they call him, from the west or east or whatever it is. But he was excellent, wasn't he?
Yes, I thought that he would, as you did, I thought that he would be doing a lot of kind of stand-up comic routines and disrupting the integrity of the book, which is so funny in itself. But he was absolutely disciplined. He gave a brilliant performance as a comic actor, which is different from being a stand-up comic. And I thought he performed in every respect brilliantly. He held the show together. In fact, I venture to say he was better than David Hyde Pierce.
Why?
Because he was genuinely funny. I think David Hyde Pierce is ironic and wry, but I don't think he's as funny as Jason
You actually
Monk.
gave a better answer when I asked that question when we saw the show.
What did I say before?
You said Deborah Monk, David Hyde Pierce. They are playing Deborah Monk and David Hyde Pierce.
Yes.
Whereas a lot of the actors in the English production were
Yes.
playing the characters.
Yes,
as
I
opposed to playing themselves playing characters.
Well remembered, Nick. I'd forgotten I'd said that. Yes, I think you're quite right. I think because they're English...
I think you're quite right.
Thank you. I think because they're English and therefore they couldn't just bring their own stage personae with them into the production. They had to play different people, whereas I think...
The director, for example.
Exactly.
We had Edward Hibbert.
Well, Edward Hibbert was absolutely awful on Broadway, I'm afraid. I mean, Edward Hibbert was playing Edward Hibbert, a camp character who he plays a lot in a very Noel Cowardly voice, which he does a lot. And we've seen that performance before.
Mostly on Frasier is the most famous.
Yes, exactly. And he's seen that performance before, and he's done that performance hundreds of times before. And actually, I've forgotten who played it. Now I must remember the name of the actor. But he was absolutely superb. It was the key performance in the show.
And he has it's a gift of a role.
It's a gift
He's
of a
also
role.
the resident director of the piece, I since found
Yes,
out.
oh, that's very interesting.
And so he's a real triple threat person.
I thought the choreography was excellent. I
Yeah.
thought the actors were witty. I thought it's everything that British performers do well, actually. So I urge you to go and see it. It's a lovely Christmas treat.
It's a wonderful piece by Camden, isn't it? They obviously have a thing about shows beginning with C that they are
Absolutely.
Strong in doing.
Chicago Cabaret Curtains.
Curtains. But it's so... I since found out it was based on a novel. And what Rupert Holmes, who's done the book, who also did the Edwin Drood musical, he didn't come up with the story at all. It's adapted by someone else. But you're continuously doing a book about Camden Ebb, aren't you? So what do you know about the history of the piece?
Not much, except that Fred Ebb died while just after they had finished writing the piece. They hadn't actually finished it. It had been largely written, but in fact it was completed by John Kander, who wrote one song, and he wrote the song about his collaborator, Fred Ebb. And the song is about the whole process of collaboration. I miss the music.
I miss my friend.
I miss my friend. It's a very moving little song. And actually, in the show, it's about a husband whose wife is becoming a star, so she's no longer a partner of his as a songwriter. But of course, it's Kander writing about Fred Ebb. And actually, he shows that he can actually write lyrics too, perhaps not quite to the level of Fred Ebb.
But the book is so good. I mean, that's what really surprised me about the show, was we know with any Camden Ebb show the songs are going to be stellar, but...
The books are often problematic.
Or they're too dark.
Well, they're very dark.
The Curtains isn't dark.
Can't be too dark for me.
No.
But no, Curtains isn't dark at all. It's completely comic from beginning to end.
And it's a great... I mean, you said to me... it's a very, very ironic piece. It's very pastiche and parodic. And you didn't think it would go down well with the audience, but we had a very stagey audience when we saw it, because it was a Sunday matinee at the Churchill in Bromley. The gags were going down incredibly well.
Yes, but I thought what was interesting was we were sitting next to some actors who were in musicals themselves,
Come from away.
and they were loving it.
Yeah.
But actually, the audience from Bromley, who really aren't, I wouldn't have thought were regular West End theatre goers, were absolutely loving it.
So Curtains is going to the Garrick Theatre this Christmas. I do urge you to go and see it because it's the first time it's been mounted properly in London. I don't mean it like it sounds, to quote Curtains. I'd seen it previously. The only production I'd seen of it prior was at Mount View, and as good as Mount View and Artsed shows are, it never really works because you have elder characters. For example, the producer in Curtains, who has the wonderful song "It's a Business." She says, "I thought you were going to give us a better version of In the Same Boat." I did. Didn't you hear it? I did. But I thought you were going to give us a better version of In the Same Boat.
Yes, of course. That doesn't really work with a 19-year-old.
But you're looking forward to tonight, Robert, to go back to the
I'm
present.
very excited about tonight. I'm curious. Like you, I think it's a very clever idea to use a David Walliams novel.
Walliams.
I'm nervous only because I would not have thought that Robbie Williams would have had the wit to write the kind of lyrics that a story like this requires, but let's give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yes, it's not just Robbie Williams, it's Guy Chambers, who's Robbie Williams' collaborator, and dare I say the one with the real talent, Eek, and also someone called Chris Heath, who has just appeared on the website to be doing also music and lyrics. So,
as long as it's not just a lot of boy band pop songs.
Well, I don't think it will be. I worry about the fact that we have three people doing music and lyrics, and the reason I worry about that is you never get a unified voice. Two people doing music and lyrics is fine, but you add a third, it might get a bit messy. Anyway, we'll let you know what we think when we have seen Act 1. We might be astonished. We might left.
I'm looking forward to it.
So Act 1 of The Boy in the Dress is over. I like the Royal Shakespeare Company. We get tea in the press bar area. One can't help but think of Matilda watching this show.
No, I think it's very much a follow-up to Matilda. Having said that, I think what's charming about it and what's different about it is that it's very much for children. Because Matilda is so dark, and because Roald Dahl is so dark, it has a very different tone and feel. Whereas, in a way, this production is more vulgar, but it's great fun, and the performances of the children are absolutely wonderful. We're seeing a remarkable young man playing Dennis.
It's Toby McCrory, M-O-C-R-E-I. I'm terribly sorry, Toby, if I've said your name wrong. But it's an astonishing performance. There are, of course, lots of other children playing all the roles. There's 30 children actors employed in this performance. Not this performance tonight, but in the show. It's doing the thing Matilda did of having the kind of young-ish members of the ensemble playing the older school kids. There's a very, very good girl who is playing Lisa James, called Tabitha Knowles, who's the kind of female interest for this character, Dennis. And it hasn't really gone where I was expecting it to. He just wants to wear a dress, doesn't he? Because he has an interest in it.
Absolutely. I think that the story is charming. I've never read the story, but I think that, I must say, I don't think I've ever seen such a complex and beautiful performance, apart from Billy Elliot, I think, which makes the same kind of demands. Matilda, yes, but in a way, Matilda, the character, is very much there.
But she has less singing to do.
Yes, and this boy has not only to look like a straightforward little boy, but he's also got to play the sadness of a boy who's lost his mother, the sadness of a boy who's lonely. He's got to play a football-loving and striker, and he does that very well. And then he's got to go through the psychological explanation, if you like, of why he wants to wear a dress. And I think that's emotionally quite difficult for a young man.
Do you wonder if that's going through his mind, or is he just a boy in a dress?
I think it's all set up in the story.
Yeah.
And I think the actor understands that perfectly well. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to play it with such subtlety. And the thing is, it's never camp, and that his performance is never camp. And I think that's the biggest tribute one can give to it, because you've got to be able to take his desire to wear a dress completely seriously.
And you do.
Yes, and the boy is not set up to be gay, and he probably isn't. I don't know how the second act will turn out, but I don't think he is. He just wants to wear a dress.
So nice.
Yes, and also it reminds him of his mother and of the feminine side of the family, which has disappeared from his life.
I love the staging, I love the book. I just wish the songs were better. That's my one criticism.
Well, I didn't expect the songs to be better than they are. The songs at times do the job. They're never witty in the way that Tim Minchin's lyrics were witty. They're never highly original as tunes. They are more vulgar, but then I think that the one moment when they all go into the glitter ball sequence, I don't know what that number was.
Disco Symphony.
It's very vulgar. When it started, I thought, oh dear, it's a lapse in taste. But actually, it turns out to be a very clever moment.
Did it remind you of Express Yourself from Billy Elliot, though? When they have the fancy in the bedroom that starts with him dressing up as
a lot of the show reminds me of Billy Elliot. A lot of the show reminds me of Matilda. But it is very well staged, very well put together. And as you say, the only weakness, I think, is in the music and lyrics.
The sets, though, are wonderful. They keep coming, all these sets just keep appearing.
They're not as sophisticated as the sets in Matilda,
no.
But then they're not trying to be. They're trying to be more storybook.
But when a bedroom came out of the floor...
Charming, delightful.
Yeah, okay, but it's the RSC, the National, they have the facilities to do this, don't they?
Well, I also think they have the nous. They have the good taste to get a designer and a choreographer and a director who will create a show which is not just commercial. Obviously, it's got very commercial values, but because it's at the RSC, they can afford to make it, if you like, let's put it in quotes, artistic.
There's lots of football in this show, and I quite like the way the football is done.
Beautifully done.
It's very simple. There's a very cute dog puppet. But I've gone into this show completely blind. I don't know what's going to happen in Act 2. There are some kids kind of at the very front who are lapping this show up, and they are very young.
Yes. I've never... I remember the audience when I first saw Matilda, and the kids were loving it, but what was interesting was the adults laughed first, and then the children did. Here, the children are laughing first. It's a real children's show.
And there's a wonderful moment where, for example, the children's humour, where he sneezes in someone's face, and it is what David Williams, I'm guessing, has done is he's taken the crude elements that Roald Dahl, and he would have grown up reading Roald Dahl. He's taken those crude elements like snot and bogies and farts and all that kind of stuff, and he's really amplified them because he knows that's what kids like.
I have a feeling that this seems like a story that he told his own kids, because it's obviously addressed directly to children, and it works for children magnificently.
And there's lots of other David Williams musicals. There's one we might see called The Billionaire Boy as well. Next year at Alton Towers, there's a David Williams ride coming. So he really is becoming this kind of beyond Little Britain children's, and it's so ironic, isn't it? That he was such a filthy character actor, and now he's become a kind of avuncular figure for children.
I think David Williams is a very sophisticated man. As a performer, he's performed in Pinter as a comic performer with Matt Lucas, but also as a writer. I think you see his sophistication in his ability to write for children. I actually think that's a rather sophisticated thing to be able to do.
And what do you think of Mark Ravenhill's book?
Yes, I'm very surprised. I thought this was the worst kind of show for Mark Ravenhill to attempt, given what we know about his plays. But he's done the book charmingly, I think. It works as a book.
Well, David Williams is dragging us back into the theatre now, so we will see Act 2, and we'll share our thoughts after that. Thank you, Robert. You'll forgive the hum of an engine, but we are currently driving home from beautiful Stratford Upon Avon. We're driving through Shakespeare County at the moment. Thankfully, I'm still here with Robert, not going home with someone else. Hello, Robert.
Hi, Nick. I'm still awake.
Yes, we're still awake, and a very, very enjoyable performance of The Boy in the Dress at the Royal Shakespeare Theatre. Overall, one can't help but compare it to Matilda, and I know we've said it before, it's been 10 years since Matilda. Robert.
It doesn't have the complexity of Matilda. It doesn't have the sophistication. It doesn't have the wit. The book is the best part of it, but even the book in the second half, I think there are some missteps, and there are, in some ways, there are too many what I call false endings. I don't know if you want to talk about that, Nick.
Yeah, but even Matilda had a false ending where Mrs. Phelps, the librarian, says, that's it, the story's over, not all stories have happy endings, the end, effectively, and then the lights fade, and then, I won't say what happens, but if you've seen it, you know what I mean. Here we have a kind of the same thing. We have a kind of reunited ending with Dennis, the boy, and his father, but then the headmaster comes on stage and kind of twists things in a different way, and that's... should we say spoilers, Robert? Or what?
I don't know. No, let's not spoil it. I think let's not spoil it. I think really it's just that at that point we have a completely new turn to the story, and then we go back to the father again, don't we?
Yeah.
And then, but you see, we've already had the huge climax in the second half of the football match.
Yes.
Which Dennis, of course, helps them to win. But I think it's too much downhill after that, because in a way that's probably the 11 o'clock number, the big number.
Yeah.
But then there are three little numbers afterwards which don't measure up.
And there's a number that should be a massive number, which we won't reveal what happens in it, but it should be bigger than sadly what it is, and that sadly is in the quality of the songwriting.
Yes, I think the songs, by the time you get into the second act, you begin to realise the songs are rather samey, and they don't. They're very well placed in the book, because I think that Mark Ravenhill has done a good job. But I think that the problem with the songs is that they don't really further the action very much at all. You can tell they're meant to do that, but each song is a pop song in itself.
Yeah.
Some of them are quite pleasant, but they're clearly pop songs.
I mean, pleasant music is great, and there's lots of pleasant music in the show, but they're not funny songs, and they're not songs that are really furthering the plot. They will make one point and repeat it and repeat it and repeat it with a very catchy chorus.
Yes. They don't develop character, they don't develop story, nothing happens within the songs.
And this is the issue with pop songwriters writing musical theatre songs. If Stars and Drew were to write the songs, or even if Tim Rice were to write the lyrics, they would have been gut-wrenchingly funny.
Yes.
And they just sadly weren't, because Guy Chambers is not a comedic songwriter. Tim Minchin, if he did the songs,
they would have been very funny.
They would have been very funny, but I think if he were to do the songs, it would have been really compared to Matilda.
Yes.
Act 2 opens with a kind of flashback number on a kind of pier funfair thing, which I liked, of course.
By the beach.
Which didn't really serve any purpose other than just remind us of the fact that this boy had a mother with whom he was close. And it did remind me of when I grew up, again, from Matilda. Sorry to keep banging on about it, but, you know, it is for obvious reasons.
So much of the show mimics Matilda and Billy Elliot that I think that one feels that they have been studied very carefully, because it's a boy in a dress rather than a boy who wants to dance.
Who also puts on a dress in a big production.
Yes. It's a boy who... sorry.
This is the first time we've ever done a podcast and driven at the same time. So, Robert, you're doing very well.
Okay. And 40, yeah. Yes, it's a boy in a dress, a boy who wants to dance. Then there's, just like in Matilda, somebody who's out of the ordinary and somebody who's not being supported by his parent in this case.
And an evil headmaster, headmistress.
And an evil headmaster, headmistress. So there are so many elements from both those shows. And yet, it hasn't got the depth of Billy Elliot, and it doesn't have the comic sophistication and irony and wit of Matilda.
But it still has the excellent staging, which I really did enjoy. As we said in the interval, the sets are glorious, the costumes are very, very good. I think it's a show worthy of a transfer. I don't know where it'll go, but it's certainly a show that I'd like to follow the path of and see how it develops in the future.
I think that commercially there's quite a good option to transfer it. I don't think it will get very good reviews generally, but I think that wouldn't really matter to the general public, because tonight the audience, including a lot of quite young children, absolutely adored it. And I think partly for its vulgarity, partly for the fact that it isn't complicated or psychologically deep. I think, sometimes one mustn't overestimate audiences.
You were praising the psychological deepness after Act 1, Robert, of this child's choice.
Well, I think that's where it should have gone, but it didn't go there. It chose to go the route of panto. It's a great panto, on the level of a panto. It works very, very well. But it is, in the end, I thought the second half became a panto.
But still a beautiful show. I think I'd like to listen to the songs again properly. I hope they do an album. I'm sure they will.
I think the songs are pleasant. I think the story is great fun. I think it's enjoyable for kids. I think it deserves a reasonable run. I don't think it's a masterpiece, and I think one must say Matilda and Billy Elliot were masterpieces.
I think it'll do incredibly well in schools because the music isn't that difficult, so I think there is a future for the show there. The cast were astonishing. I think that's one of the highlights. The band were very, very good.
I don't think... I think this boy's performance ranks as one of the greatest performances by a child actor that I've ever seen.
Well, there you go. That's all we need to say about that, really. I don't think you can get any better praise than that. Robert, thank you very, very much for taking me to see The Boy in the Dress, and thank you to the RSC for inviting us. Do go and check it out if you like new British musical writing. It's really good to support it. And we're going to drive home now and hopefully not crash. Goodbye, Robert. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nick.
Our greatest thanks to the RSC for making this episode possible. For more information about The Boy in the Dress, you can visit rsc.org.uk, and the musical is playing until the 8th of March 2020. Though I'm sure, judging on the reviews it got, it won't be the last time you'll hear from it. Thank you very much for listening to this week's episode. My name is Nick Hudson. Bye-bye. For more information about Musical Talk, please visit our website at musicaltalk.co.uk. You can email us at feedback@musicaltalk.co.uk, listen to past episodes on iTunes and YouTube, and follow our social media channels on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.